We are the subtotal of the choices and the decisions we make every day. When you get up, you got to decide you're going to make it a great day. I am super excited about today's talk because here on Effective Living, it's all about helping you to take control of your life and deciding to play your best game with the cards you've been dealt. Now, here's the deal. As you get up, you got to tell yourself, I'm going to get up with determination to go forward and make it a great day. So I'm Coach Ricardo Miller, and if this is your first time watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. Every day we're providing good content that's helping you to think a little bit different, highlighting certain truths so that you can change your life for the better. I'm joined with my special guest, Twyla Marks. What's up, Twyla?
Hello, good morning. Yes.
Man, I'm so excited about this conversation. I've been wanting to do this for a while. And so now we've been able to come together to make this happen. Tell our viewing audience, people from around the world will be watching us today. And so this week, and this is going to be content that's eternal, but go ahead and tell our viewing audience a little bit about Twyla.
Absolutely. I'm Twyla Marks. Thank you, Coach Ricardo, for having me. I'm an author. My book is entitled The Unexpected, The Ride of My Life, where I share my life's journey, focal point with my toxic marriage and even more toxic divorce. And I'm glad to be here. I'm a native Texan, and I'm just looking forward to this conversation today.
Yes, excellent. So you wrote a book. Let's highlight the book just for a few minutes, and we're going to dive into this topic, divorce, and everything else in addition that's connected to this. But let's talk a little bit about your book. When did you write the book? What made you put pen to paper?
Absolutely. So the book released in December of 2019. And it is when I decided to put the pen to paper and become very serious about releasing it. I actually started writing it, Coach Ricardo, years before my divorce. And I thought the book was going to take a completely different direction, but then life happened. And so I decided to write my journey and my story to inspire and encourage others. It is all truth, my truth. It's a nonfiction book. And I'm speaking directly to you about my journey. Yeah.
You said something, life happens. Boy, doesn't it? The older you get, the more you start to realize life truly happens. There are people who are watching us today. You said you mentioned a divorce. You mentioned toxic divorce. Well, let's dive into that a little bit. There are people who just outright don't even like what they call the D word. Let's start there. I mean, did you ever had you found yourself at a place where you didn't like the D word, and it was one of those, oh man, I ain't gonna ever say the D word, not to mention have to execute the D word.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was married for 10 years. We had a thing that you call a blended family, right? So he had a child, I had a child, and then we had a child together. And so it was, I wouldn't say every day. I always say every day was not a Nightmare on Elm Street, but it was not ordained by God. It was something that I forced to happen. And just to be transparent here, and it just didn't work, or we both forced it because we were expecting and we thought, oh, the right thing to do is to get married. Well, not necessarily. And so, yes, that's kind of that was the foundation. So it started off on a rocky terrain anyway. And then we had issues, we argued. It just wasn't right. I wasn't his best friend. I always tell people to this day, be best friends with the man or woman you decide to spend the rest of your life with. And when I made a decision, Coach Ricardo, to actually leave, it was scary. I was fearful. I didn't know what the other side was going to look like, but I knew I had to get out of the situation I was in.
10 years. That's a decade.
Yeah.
You spend a decade with a person. Let's start where you said initially, this is not something you necessarily wanted, but obviously you had to come to some conclusion this ain't working. But let's start with that. I want to help people who are listening. We're gonna take bite-sized pieces out of your story and really try to help some people out.
Yeah.
You initially said that, yeah, we were expecting, but this really wasn't an expecting that you think should have brought us to marriage, but we ended up getting married. Let's talk about the decision to get married when you think, and let's talk about it from not only what you made as a decision, but let's talk about it from how people come about making that decision and
Right.
how unhealthy that is, because that oftentimes starts something off wrong.
Yes. So it's not a healthy decision to get married just because you're expecting or someone's pressuring you. It's a decision that you and God, I'm going to go spiritual for a minute,
Yep.
that you seek God and say, Lord, is this the person that you really have for me? Regardless of the outside pressures, regardless of what may be going on. If it's not right, if it's not ordained by God, don't do it. I would say that, because in the long run, you're just not going to be happy, because things are going to just ravel and fall apart, because it wasn't started on a great foundation. It came about from other areas or other stressors in your life. And you're right. Some people do it. I did it, and I just recommend don't do that. And then let's take it a step further. As we're talking about kids, don't necessarily stay together just for the kids, because the kids know it's a toxic environment. They feel it, they see it, and that's not healthy for them long term as well.
Let's talk about what you say is toxic. What are some of the dynamics that builds for a toxic marriage, toxic relationship?
Yes, yes. So when you're arguing over what you're going to eat every day, that's toxic. That's not normal.
Okay, yeah.
That's just not normal. In my experience, that occurred. I would say every day. That's a little bit drastic, but it occurred on a regular basis. When you're arguing, leaving from church, when you just got the word, that's toxic, right?
Yeah.
And you just don't agree. You see things differently. And I know men are different from women,
Yeah.
but you're not on one accord. You have different ideas, and you're just not connected. And so I've heard someone say that is what you need in a relationship. You need that connection in a relationship, and that if that's missing, you may just be in trouble, right?
Yeah. What about before marriage? Let's talk about that. The connection that was there or wasn't there. That obviously there was connection enough for love making, right?
Yeah, at some point, yeah.
Yeah, there was some kind of connection there to make out. But now let's ask the question to move it to a point where when you look back, what would you say the connection was on a scale of 1 to 10? We were a nice 3.5, 4, 5, good medium, enough to get along,
Yeah.
but really wasn't definitely across the 5, going up to that 7, 8 to get married and then work out those little extras different. What were the chemistry factors before marriage that could have had better, if looked at, should have been telltale signs this would not be a good marriage fit?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question, and because there were initially. So I will say this: I was very, very connected and attracted to his younger son. Meaning, my heart went out for him. He was 4, and my daughter was 4, so they weren't even in school yet, and I just felt like he was screaming out, for lack of a better phrase, for love, for motherly love, because he didn't have that in his life. And so that was one of the things that drew me in. I was like, oh my God, this little boy is just the cutest little thing. I want to be a part of his life. And I did. I loved my ex-husband. At some point, I stayed with him, like you mentioned, a decade. So love had to exist, right? At some point. But at year 5, that's interesting you say that. I wanted to leave him then. But I reached out to my love of my life, my grandmother, and we had a conversation. And she shared something with me, and she's very transparent, and she just says it like it is. And so she told me, she said, don't leave him, you still love him.
Yep.
And I could not answer definitively no. I said, you know what, I do. So I tried to work it out. We went to counseling, and that just raveled, and I stayed another 5 years. So, but long story short, there was connection. I did love him. We did get along at some point, but then things started to change, and for various reasons. And that's when the toxicity came into the marriage. Yeah.
Nobody goes into marriage thinking divorce.
Nobody.
Right? Nobody
Right.
goes into marriage thinking divorce, but divorce happens, right?
Right.
Divorce happens. Let's talk about the emotional state of one being in a miserable state with someone and then having to decide to disconnect from that person. How and what was that like for you?
Wow. Emotions. Oh my goodness. It was difficult. It was very difficult. I wondered, what am I going to do with my kids? Because again, I had the daughter and we had a son together. What are my kids going to think? What are people going to think? That was another big one for me. What are people going to think? But I had to lay aside all of those outside stressors and pressures and say, you know what? I don't really care what people are going to think. This is my life and I have to get on with it, or I'm going to be miserable for the rest of my life. And that's not a decision I wanted to be in. That's not a situation I wanted to be in for the rest of my life. So I had to make the decision to leave. I was the initiator, and it was not pretty. It was not. A divorce in and of itself. I tell people, Coach Ricardo, all the time, regardless of how cordial and even if it's mutual by both parties, divorce in and of itself, the word is stress. The word is contentious. It's rough because there's going to come a point in time where there's going to be something that the other party doesn't agree on. And there it is, as you're going through the process. So it was difficult, very emotional. I actually had to go to therapy, and there's nothing wrong with therapy. I had to work on myself. I'd been with this guy 11 years. Wait a minute, who is Twyla?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's talk about we realize that the level of stress that comes from having to make a decision. Okay, I'm going through a divorce.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave him in your case. And there's this pressure, about the kids, about what people think. I've been with him for 10 years. What would you say were three things that you says, enough is enough, I'm gone? What would be the three things that comes to mind?
Wow. One was, he didn't really like to work.
That's
I was, let's keep it real. I was one that at the time I was in management and health insurance industry, and I supported the house, which I'm fine with that. And your viewers here and listeners here, if something occurs that you have to step up to the plate, meaning the woman, a job loss or illness or what have you, that I'm fine with that. But that wasn't the case here. He just simply didn't like to work. And then second of all, the way we both our parenting skills were completely in left field. He was on one end of the spectrum and I was on the other. And that caused major issues. And then third, I would even say our spirituality was different. He believed in God, but it was just different. We were just going in opposite directions, totally different opposite directions. And the support from him was it wasn't there. Anything I wanted to do, he didn't support it. It was a lot. Yeah.
There are people that are watching this today and would find themselves, probably in a relationship, and there's that blissful place.
Yeah.
A blissful place. Everything's nice. It just feels great. But blissful can go bad.
Yeah.
give us some clue on, the season where blissful was turning into bad. It was like there was no more joy, it was more sorrow. It was no more delight, it was more misery. Well, give us an understanding on the journey there that was possibly could have started to take you to a stressful state or a depressing state, or, as you mentioned, I don't want to live like this.
Yeah, yeah. Yes. A lot of my family, let's just keep it real here. A lot of my family just didn't care for him. And I don't know if it was the same with his family, with me. No one expressed that or communicated that to me, but my family was very vocal. They just didn't care for him. So that made it difficult for family gatherings. They just tolerated him, basically. And the most important people in my life, I mentioned my grandmother. She was one of those people that did not care for him. And she and I are extremely close. She raised me. She's my heart. And that was tough. And so I had to put on a fake face and mask and be around people that I knew didn't really care for him, and I say I wore a mask, but people saw it. You can only hide things for so long because the real emotions and the real you is going to come out eventually. So yeah, that was
How important is it to have family support or family embracing? Do you think that was a necessary piece that should have been there, or can it be great without that?
No, I guess to answer your question, it could be great, but then in my mind, Coach Ricardo, you're kind of isolating your family, people that you've been around your whole life, and then I always say you don't just marry that person, you marry the family. It's, you marry the family.
But someone watching us will say the good book say leave and cleave.
Leave and cleave. Absolutely. That is true. The Bible does say that. But then what do? There's family gatherings, there's Christmas, there's all kinds, there's birthdays, there's graduation. So do you just isolate yourself from all of that and don't participate? And I don't think you do. But at the same time, if it's not a situation where your family doesn't support it, or you think that your family doesn't like them, or maybe not even think, they've communicated, hey, I don't really care for this person. So you feel like, oh, going back to leave and cleave, and you go in that shell, and then you decide you don't want to really be around family as much because they don't care for that person.
Let's talk about the there's a whole lot could go on right there, because family dynamics in marriage is a big subject,
Yeah.
And there is a lot to be talked about prior to probably getting married. The differences in family dynamics, and then the Bible does say, leave and cleave, and what is both parties' position in making sure that we're good even if no one else is good with us. And there will be some people who say, hey, listen, I'm marrying you, I'm not marrying your family. Now I know your family comes with you, but you're my priority, or vice versa. So there are a lot of people who would say, hey, I love my family, but I didn't marry my family, and I have to make my significant other my priority. What would you say to that?
Yeah. What I would say to that, wow, that's a tough one. But what I would say to it, you're right. And just let them know that you're going to be with, like you said, the Bible says leave and cleave, and you have to take care of your family. When I say family, your family, your ready-made family, your married family first. He's your priority, because also the Bible says, wives, submit to your husband. So yeah, I would say just have a conversation with your family members and move on with your marriage, because at the end of the day, you want peace in your marriage. And if peace is missing from marriage, then that's an issue, that's a problem. Yeah. And, if you can't have peace under your own roof, where else can you have it? Right?
Yeah. Peace is critical. It's so super
Yeah,
important. My grandmother used to say, "May the peace of God that passeth all understanding." That's in the book as well.
that's right.
May the peace of God that passeth all understanding rest and abide with you now and forevermore. I love
Right.
that, because it is, I seek after peace. Let me ask you this: you talk about the faking it, the facade, the just looking like you got it going on, but the reality of it is, you get in the car and there's a cuss out. It's a back turn. It's a
Yeah, yeah.
it's just you've not connected in a while.
Hmm.
You've not connected in a while, but in front of people, you're playing the role. What's that all about? What do you think that's about?
Yes, absolutely. I can definitely answer that one. I almost wrote my book about uncovering the mask
Yeah.
because that is the life I lived, Coach Ricardo, for almost the entire marriage, or at least half of it anyway. And so, yes, you're right. There was times like I mentioned earlier, we left church or even going to church. Now, going to church, now, you might be arguing, but coming home from church, you just got the word. Why are you arguing?
Yeah.
But yes, and because you're worried about what people are going to think about you. You're crying, you're hurting behind closed doors. And then when you go outside, you got to put that smile on. You got to put that mask on to make everyone feel like you mentioned, you got it going on, but you're screaming for help on the inside and behind closed doors. And when you're going around your neighborhood, don't even want to pull in the garage because you know that it's about to just be chaotic. That's a situation that's just toxic. That's another one of those toxic areas that if that's not what you want to, if that's what you're doing, that's very toxic because that's not normal. You
Right.
should be loving to go home to be with your spouse and wanting to be in their presence. But if you're not, that's a situation.
What would you say to someone who's married? What are the things that would be required to making sure that you feel good about going home, and you're looking forward to seeing your spouse, and you made it to 5 years and you're going to make it to 10, and it's going to be blissful continuously. Not that marriage won't have its challenges in the years that you are in it, but what are some of the ingredients that would have made a great desire to come home type of experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I say all the time, marriage is not about you. It's about serving the other person
Yeah.
and putting yourself on the back burner at times and making sure your husband, making sure your wife is fine, before you in your day, babe, is there anything that you need? I'm on my way home, making sure they're okay and that you cook their favorite meal or serving that other person, right? And so I think that's one of the things that serves a good marriage and makes a good marriage, serving that other person, being there for the children. If there's something you want to do, maybe there's a sacrifice, maybe you can't do it. Maybe you have to be with the family this weekend as opposed to, oh, no, I'm going out with my girls. Sometimes there's things that as a married person, Coach Ricardo, just you can't live your life like you're single, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about the reality of persons in a marriage going through a challenging marriage. The communication and I think they said communication and finances and even sex are in the top three reasons why
Yeah.
people get divorced.
Yeah.
Communication, finances, romance, or emotional connection. What
Hmm.
was your position before we move into talking about life after divorce? What
My
was your
position.
position? Yeah, in those with the understanding while you were married, you know what? Okay, communication was, man, we did not know how to talk to each other. I mean, at some point you could feel as though you have a connection, but did you learn how to connect in communicating with each other? And then you mentioned a little bit, but I would like for you to dive into it. He didn't know how to keep a job, or it didn't work a lot. If let's say that, and so that's a money issue. And so that's
Yes,
that
it is.
second thing that a lot of people talk about. You
Right.
want to highlight any focus on any particular points I just mentioned?
Oh, sure. That was definitely one of them. And then another was communication. We did not do it very well. That was one of the reasons why we went to counseling, to have better communication, speak better to one another. Don't talk to one another like your enemies. But that goes back to that point. He wasn't my best friend. And I know this is going to sound very crazy, but I just didn't really like him. How are you married to someone for 10 years that you just don't like? Well, I did that. So
How did you get there, though? How did you get to a point where you married somebody you didn't even like?
going
I
back
mean,
to,
look back at that bubble. Look back at that, because there was a blissful moment for you to start to say yes. Okay, there was a moment. Was it a passionate in bed moment? And he was like, you know what? Will you marry me? And you be like, in the moment, yes. And you're like, I'm not thinking right now. This is not the time to think. But you know what? I feel great now. Was it a now moment that caused you to say yes? Or was it his son that caused you, like, you're hanging with the son and you're like, this is the little coolest dude on the planet. I would so be your mama, right? Was it that, or was it y'all look great together? And you be like, you know what? I can stand next to him, and we can be somebody. But the reality of it is, you did not answer a lot of other things. So, what would it be that you say, looking back, was your bubble that got you to say yes? Because you just said he was not your friend.
he was not, he wasn't, you know, wow, that's a mouthful. So, yes, there was a circumstance
Yeah,
outside of us expecting
yeah.
that I really felt like this was him. And that's funny you said that too, because there were people that told us, oh gosh, y'all are just cute, and y'all look good together. And that started to feed my ego on top of the situation. He just kind of came along and knocked me off my feet, did things that other men didn't do initially. And I had just moved to Dallas, and it just happened. Like, from the date we met, Coach Ricardo, from the date we met till the time I was walking down the aisle to meet him at the altar was 10 months. So it happened fast.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So, but
Yeah.
how he showed up initially, it was not necessarily love. It was impress.
That is a great description. Absolutely. Yes. It was not necessarily love. I grew to love him. He grew
But
on me.
never really liked him.
Not really. Not really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That there's a lot that can be dissected in that whole thing right there, right?
Yes.
I'm impressed because obviously he's showing up better than a lot of guys you may have seen or had experience before, and be like, okay, this is pretty cool. You got friends who are saying, you know what, hey man, y'all look good together. You know what I'm saying? And this 10-month window, y'all are having a blast. But in the midst of it, that soul searching in depth, were there any premarital counseling going on?
Yes, we did that because we could not, the pastor that married us would not marry us until we went through that
So
course.
was
Yeah.
it surface premarital counseling, or was it professional premarital counseling? You know, a
I
lot of
think it
pastors.
was surface just to get through the motion, go through the motion so we could get married.
Yeah, because a lot of churches, that little light interview, that's more of an interview conversation than premarital counseling.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a surface. It definitely, and that's why we went through counseling a couple of times during our marriage.
With the
Yeah.
same person?
No, different
No.
person. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's dive into this a little bit more with the like and the love. I like the fact that you drew the line very clear there. I really didn't like him. We weren't friends. I think friendship is important. What do you think hindered it from being friends? Did you think y'all never were friends? Y'all were more, I don't want to use this term, but we're lovers. We're not friends. In other words, we don't hang together. We don't enjoy each other together. But you know what? We have good romantic experiences together. But
Yeah.
we're not friends in the sense of that invested connection
Yeah.
that builds for a couple to be able to survive and thrive through anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I didn't enjoy being around him. He didn't make me laugh. It was, for lack of a better word, it was quite boring.
Mhm.
Quite boring. And we weren't friends. I didn't hate him, no. And even to this day, I don't hate him. He just wasn't a good man for me.
Yeah.
After the time went through it and realized he just wasn't. And yeah, I just didn't enjoy being around him. And at times that it was okay, but my focus was my kids
Yeah.
and the facade and the idea. I'm going to use that word, and the idea of being married.
Yeah.
I wanted to be married, but that he wasn't the man that God wanted me to be married to. So
I got you. Now I'm
yeah,
gonna ask you this is a strong question. This is a good one. All right.
okay,
The I heard 3 points that you said that for him, you know what, man, deal breakers, frustration max at the highest level. I can't do this. I'll never
yeah,
do this if I ever see these telltale signs. Let's turn the cameras on you for a moment because it takes two to be married. In
yeah,
your case, what would you say he would say would be frustration coming from you? Uh
yeah.
that when you walked in the door, he was like, that ain't she home, right?
Oh
Or
yeah,
that he'll be like, you know what, I'm gonna sleep on the sofa. I'm not gonna get up and go to the bed. Where
yeah.
where would you say his frustration was? It, I'm gonna just give a couple of examples and then you feel free. Would he say, man, she was just mouthy, Jesus, she just snapped, right? She would snap all the time. Or he may say, you know what, she's a control. She wanted I dotted and T's crossed when she wanted I. That was just two examples. You give
Yeah.
me your three as to what you perceive he might say.
Oh yeah, and absolutely, it takes two in a marriage. And I wasn't perfect, and I'm still not. And there were some things that I did as well. And one being, I do feel like looking back at it and going through my counseling and therapy,
So,
I was a little controlling. I was, um, and that's not a good thing. And then second of all, I probably was a little bit of a nagger. Um, and that's one thing I talk to people all the time now. Like, don't be a nagger,
yeah.
please. That's a major turn off and frustration for your spouse. I was, can be honest here. And then three, because of the financial situation, I did feel like I had some control because I was bringing in the money. And I probably talked degrading to him at times because of that,
Yep.
as opposed to, baby, it's going to be okay. And so that support factor.
Now, look, I'm gonna come into the camera a little bit much on that because
Okay.
those, those three, man. I'm a guy, okay?
Oh, you got to take your glasses off. Oh, I thought
I'm
you were
like,
about to take your
woo,
glasses off on that one.
a little controlling. Now, control for a man. I mean, men are
Yeah.
the dominant
Yeah.
theme. So to have a woman that you said, I'm a little controlling, right?
I
That
was.
that that's a big one. And then another one you mentioned that hey, degrading. Oh my goodness. I mean, talking down to a little bit, talking down to that could be another rough bump in the road. I mean, on a serious note, but thanks for sharing that. Those are good stuff. What advice would you give to someone in a marriage that's a woman that's doing any of those three things or all of those three things? How you would now look back and say, you know what, that definitely did not contribute to the health of our marriage. It definitely, more than anything, it further weakened what we were trying to build.
Yeah. Yeah. Support. A man needs to feel that support. A man needs to feel peaceful. He needs that. So speaking degrading towards your husband is not going to help at all if it's already toxic. Like you mentioned, Coach Ricardo, it's just going to drive you away further. And also, I mentioned the peace. A
Yep.
man has to have that, and being a nagger is not peaceful for him. It's not. So if he says something, just okay, don't keep pushing buttons. If it's a hot button for him, back away. If it's a situation or a conversation you need to have and you're emotional, don't discuss it right then and there. Come back to it 2 or 3 days later. Let your emotions kind of calm down and settle down before having that conversation, because you
Good,
want him to be in a receptive place to receive it.
good stuff. Let's dive into our talk the last few minutes that we have. Let's talk about the life after divorce. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
you've had to make a decision. I'm going to move on. He's going to move on. We decided we're going to get a divorce.
Yeah.
That's rough. There's a lot of decisions that are extremely painful. What were some of the, would you say, were some of the most painfulest decisions in the walking away process? Was it the court? Was it the dividing assets? Was it the children separating? What for you? What was it?
Right. Well, it was a couple of those things. Not necessarily assets, because we didn't have a lot of assets to divide other than the house, and and I got the car. But it definitely was my kids. I was very stressed. When I say my kids, they were packaged, but specifically speaking, the kid he and I had together.
Yeah.
My son, or our son, was in the 6th grade when this happened, and it's another 6 years before, right, he graduates. So my fear was the back and forth. How stable is my son going to be? Is he going to like this? Going to his dad's every other weekend and the Thursdays that he was available to get him. That just, oh gosh, that just sent chills up my spine to have my son do that. But he had to do it, because he wasn't abusive or anything. The court didn't deem him an unfit father. That's just the process. Unless you can agree to do the back and forth every other week thing, it's every other weekend and Thursdays. That's the visitation rule here in Texas. So that was definitely an issue, that I felt, well, not necessarily issue. I just felt fearful. And then financially, I really didn't feel like I wasn't able to support both he and my daughter. My daughter at the time was 14, because I'd been doing it. So it was mainly my fear of the kid, my son. And then at that point, I didn't care what people thought. I just knew I needed out and I needed to get my happy back after divorce.
Yeah. Let's talk about that happy back. Because there are a lot of people who, after divorce, they take a long time to get their happy back. What was that journey like for you? What were some of the things that you did? You mentioned that you went and got therapy. You met with a therapist and got some help there. What would you say in addition to that was some of the things that you did that helped you to get your happy back?
Oh, absolutely. Coach Ricardo, it was routine for me. I'm a huge sports fan, Cowboys, Mavericks. But during the time, I went to Maverick games just by myself, took myself to dinner, took myself to the movies, all of these things. Because I didn't do any of that in my marriage. It was all about my family. So I had to get back to, what does Twyla like to do? Who is Twyla? You know, I can go out, and hang out with my friends. Hey, my daughter and my son, they were old enough to stay home alone for a couple of hours.
Yep.
And that's what I did. And sat around. Sometimes I would just go to the park and walk. Just things that made me happy. Things that I didn't do or
Yeah.
probably do for years.
Did
And
you find yourself after the divorce? Did you find yourself beating yourself up? Did you find yourself overly condemning yourself for having stuck through a 10-year, which you felt as though was not the best of marriage, or just what people think? I mean, what was the cleaning up of your mindset along the way after leaving?
Yes, I did. All of those emotions, divorce recovery, a myriad of emotions you go through a complete, it's like a death, right? So you go
Yep.
through that whole process, grieving, you go through blaming yourself. And I did. I was like, wow, if I would have just left him earlier, I did. And it was tough. And that was part of my therapy, to deal with that and not blame myself and move forward. So yeah, I certainly did that.
Now that you're moving towards this happy place. Let's talk to people that are watching. What would be, and I heard you highlight a few things, but I want you to give some thoughts to our viewing audience so they can get something really tangible out of this as a takeaway. After divorce, critical things one should do. I like the fact that you say, hey, I went out and I treated myself. I liked games before I got married. I'm in a metropolitan area where I can go to a Mav games, a Cowboy game. So I'm going to go to a game. What are some of the things that someone should do to ensure that they're thriving and developing and becoming their best self even after divorce, in your opinion?
Yeah. I would also say journal, write things down, write your thoughts down, write your feelings down. And I did, and that's great. Don't always make it about your kids either. You have to look at yourself because it starts with you. If you're not healthy, you're not going to be able to be there for your children. Your kids will be fine. I promise you, kids are resilient. They will bounce back. I journaled. Like I mentioned earlier, I went to the park. It seemed like even my spiritual journey, I became deeper with God and my faith and everything that I didn't do while I was married because of the situation. I just did it. I jumped out there and did things. And for your viewers and listeners here, I would just say, take your time to heal. Don't just put yourself out there out of loneliness and start dating. No, you have to get yourself together. Because if you're not together, you won't be together for anybody else. I know that's probably not correct grammar, but I'm just putting it out there like that. Work on you. Self-healing is different for every single person. It may take me 2 years before I'm ready. It may take someone else 5 years or what have you. And don't compare yourself to others' journey and their recovery process because it's different for everyone.
That is so good. Ladies and gentlemen, well, we're here on this beautiful Saturday morning. I'm talking with Twyla Marks, and we're talking about life after divorce. She shared some of her stories up to this point on where she got to the place where she walked away and decided, I can't do this no more. And she provided us just now with some practical things that you should be about on your way to living life to the fullest. Go ahead, if you can, guys, as you're watching, put in the comment section what you believe are critical things one should do as well. Okay, people are going to come through and they're going to read, and it may trigger and support and help someone else who's going to watch this live. Twyla, let's dive into my last two questions.
Yeah.
You know what? Looking back, what would you say to yourself, your 20-year-old self, looking back, knowing what you know now and seeing the journey of becoming who you are now? If you could say to yourself at 20, what advice would that be? Share that with us.
Oh, wow. To listen more. Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, yes, at 20 and myself now, knowing what I know now, to listen more than you speak, and just be observant of others. And if it doesn't feel right in your gut, in your spirit, 9 times out of 10, it's not right.
Wow.
Yeah.
What does effective living look like to you, Twyla? The platform is effective living. You are now you said, I wanted my happiness back, but let's push this a little bit further. Happiness to you is this. Let's push it a little bit further. Effective living to you is what?
Effective living is this, Coach Ricardo. You're walking in purpose. You're walking in what God has for you, using your gifts and your talents to be an inspiration to others and to serve others in this life.
Good stuff. Listen, you have a show, you have a book, you have a platform. Tell our viewing audience a little bit about your book, your platform, and how they can get in contact with you.
Absolutely. Yes. My book is entitled The Unexpected, The Ride of My Life. It's my life story. Some of the things I've shared today, I talk in great detail about them in my book. And my platform, I do have a podcast, Talks with Twyla, that's available on all major podcast platforms and YouTube channel, and where you can reach me and purchase my book and find more about who Twyla is on my website. That's TwylaMarks.com. TWYLA, M as in Michelle, Marks.com.
Twyla, give our viewing audience your closing spill. This is the reminder to everyone watching. There is life after divorce in Twyla Marks way and form. Share with our viewing audience.
Absolutely. Life after divorce can be such a glorious and great thing, right? But there's work to get there. And once you do the work, meaning you go through your self healing process, what that looks like, forgiveness, be a great co parent, because again, it's about your children after divorce. It's not about you, it's about your children. Be a great co parent and make sure that you don't bash the other parents in front of your children. That is a big no no, because that child wants to have a relationship with both of you. They love both of you. And when you get to that point, be a great co parent, forgive, move on. When I say move on, I'm not necessarily meaning dating. I mean, that may come into play too. You may even remarry, but move on from the past marriage. And it's a beautiful thing. And get your happy back. Take yourself to dinner.
Yeah, take yourself to dinner.
Date yourself.
Date yourself, get your happy back. Hey guys, if you're on your journey to getting your happy back, place that in the comment section. Listen, Twyla, we're gonna have to do this again. I have a series of talks centered around this topic. Would love to be a part of that experience. But in addition, guys, I want to announce that our 5K run walk is fast approaching, everyone. Arlington, Texas is the place to be on April 10th. Now, listen, guys, if you have not registered, Twyla, don't go nowhere yet. All right.
Okay.
If you have not registered, guys, you got to register. Go to ricardomiller.com and register for the 5K. People are calling, the materials are coming in, and we want a strong showing. Okay. And here's the deal. We're taking our time going back. So this is not going to be a big 5K, because we really want it to be sort of an exclusive, effective living community 5K. So I'm inviting about 50 of you guys that are in the area to join me. And so come on out and be a part of the 5K. Twyla, if you have the time, you should join us on April 10th. It's going to be April 10th at 8 a.m. The Legacy River Parks here in Arlington, Texas. Beautiful. As a matter of fact, I just learned it is number 2 for best park in the DFW area. Okay, best park, number 2. And so here's the deal. It's going to be a nice experience. Now, in addition to the 5K, y'all know the Effective Living Virtual Retreat is fast approaching that same weekend on Thursday. Everybody's going to start prepping, because Friday, April 9th is when it starts. We got opening virtual session training that will help you to construct your life in a way that make things come together for you. You got to tell yourself, I'm going to live life effectively, and I'm going to do the work to make that happen. And so make sure that you register. ricardomiller.com is the place to be. Twyla has a book out, guys. Make sure you get the book. Follow her on YouTube. Go ahead and check out her podcast. Twyla, it was a delight to have you this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. My pleasure.
Blessings. Have a great day, guys. Tag somebody, invite someone to watch this wonderful conversation with Twyla. Listen, guys, there is life after divorce. We have more talks like this coming soon. Blessings. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.